So this is the class project, Bootstrap 4, and we're doing is the video part 2 for layout number 3, part 2 with it. So when you start to look at the navigation in this, and I'm going to have an entire unit about talking about navigation, how you name your navigation with it. And in programming we call that nodes. They're just really, and it boils down to is the search engine optimization with it. So when you talk about navigation, it has to be like you hear of when people want to access something on your web page, it has to be less than 3 clicks with it as well. So I'm gonna have a whole exercise, a whole unit talking about navigation for you as well. So bear with me in this with this exercise, what I'm about to talk to you about. All these stuff that I'm putting on here, they're placeholders with it. So we're going to start with, after that, after inside of this, you're going to use the nav. There's a class we're going to use, and this class is going to be called nav bar expand. S for small, and space BG for the background color, and we're going to use the dark nav bar dash dark is the other properties with this. So and then I'm going to hit enter, and just to move this nav bar down here with it. So you will see the closing of the nav bar within everything inside this. Let me tighten up the code. Everything inside of this was what you're going to be using in this as well. So when you first loaded your page, there will start in the class that's going to go nav bar, and there's a default setting that you always want to set to it. It could be your home page. That's always says a default. Remember the anchor link a class. We're going to use the class that's called nav bar brand. It's nav bar dash brand space. Let's come out of that, and the href is the reference where it links to. Remember that. And anytime when you see that I put a pound sign or hashtag or pound sign, it's a placeholder. It makes the link active. It's linked, but later on, after you finish this template, you have to go and replace this, whether it's index page or home. You replace this link with it with the actual file name. All right, we don't know what that is, so I'm just going to leave that the way it looks like right now. I'm going to close that and close the anchor tank, and I'm going to do nav bar as a placeholder with this text with it. All right, come to the right to that and close that off with it. We're going to start with the button element, and we're going to use a class that's called the navbar dash toggler. Navbar dash toggler, and come to the right of that, and you're going to give that another attribute of type is button. Come to the right of that quotation, and you're going to do data dash toggle. You notice how I hit tab, it puts the equal sign, and it puts the quotation in for me. And every time we can collapse it, come to the right of that, hit space, data, target, and close that off with an ID call collapse symbol nav bar. Okay, now these have to have the exact spelling with the ID name with it as well. So I close that tag. Now, does your code look like my code right now with it before I move forward? Inside of this, we're going to actually put in a span class with this. So this is the span class, and the span class, if you recall, it's like a table that actually you could have columns and rows with it as well. So I'm going to use this class that's called the nav bar dash toggler dash icon. Come to the right of that, close off that tag, and span. And that will conclude your button, everything inside your button right now. Okay, so here's your button class. Here's your button class. Here's the beginning and here's the closing. So make sure you have the buttons I have. And then I have a nav bar that's linking outside with it above it. It looks like this. Alright, let me back out and tighten this up with it. Now, inside of this, you're going to start with another div tag. So this, I'm still in my navigation elements with it. I'm going to start with another div tag. And in this div tag that I'm going to use right here, I'm going to use the class, and this class is the collapsible, alright, collapse nav bar, this one, and the nav bar dash collapse close that off with an ID. It's going to call collapsible nav bar. Come to the right of that, close that tag off, and it closes off that div tag that you have. Now you're going to put everything inside of that div tag. Now let me toggle back to this right here. Now this is what if you recall, in our first couple of days of our first few days of the class, I talked to you about the UL is the unlisted and the LI is the listed item that you can actually use with it. Well, navigation is a great tool that you can use to do using UL unlisted. UL and the unlisted class that's already built in is what's called the nav bar dash nav. Alright, so close off that. Now you notice that how I indent in and I'm taking out some spaces in between. Make sure you have it indent in. Now it's what's between here. Remember how UL is? These are like bullet points with it. So inside of this you're going to do an LI, which is a listed, which has, anytime you list something, it actually puts in the number at 1, 2, 3, A, B, C. That's LI. It's listed elements with it. So LI. This time I'm going to use a class called nav dash item. Alright, so here's the first link. Here's an anchor link called A. You're going to call that class. We're going to call it nav link is the navigation to it. Nav dash link to it. And you're going to come on and you do href. Again, the pound is a placeholder. Later on you're going to link to your web page from here, but this is all a placeholder with it. So I don't know how many links you plan to have, but let's call this thing link 1. Alright, as a placeholder with it. Now make sure you have exactly what I have with it. This is your first link with it, so we're going to copy and paste. Make sure there's no syntax errors, nothing that is wrong with no squiggly lines or anything unusual with it. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to highlight this first link. I'm going to copy it, depending on the number of links that you have. I'm going to copy it and paste 2 more times. So I'm going to, oops, Control Z. So I'm going to copy it, Control C, place my cursor after the closing. The LI is the list. Control V, paste. That's 1. That's the second one. So I have three total links in here. It's between here. So I want you to pause the video. If you need to pause the video, make sure your code looks exactly like my code. Here is the beginning of the navigation and to the ending of navigation. Does your code look like mine before we move forward? This is very important for you too. So take a second to do this. Just take a second for me. Okay, so the next part is I want to show you this, and if you want to see what it looks like in your browser, you can always open up your Chrome browser, because I have this on autosave, and I want to show you what that page looks like with it as well. Of course, this isn't it with it, but I'm going to right mouse click on the layout 3, open live server. So this is what we currently have. That's okay, bear with me. We're not totally finished yet, but there's a nav bar that we're going to look at. And here's link 1, link 2, link 3. We're not totally done with this, but it looks something like this. here's your Jumbotron. All right, and we're not completely finished yet with it. All right. So inside of this, this is where the Jumbotron is going to begin with it. But I'm going to make sure that we have. Here's your closing of your LI, and then you have your unlisted, and then you have your div, and you see how I indented in. And this is if you want to make sure you click on your nav, it pairs it with your lower one. Click on your button, it should pair your button. Click on this div, they should pair your div, your nav, and your UL, okay? And each 3 of your LIs you're listed. Okay, do you have something that looks like this for now with it? All right. I'll make sure here. So nav bar dash toggler icon. All right, and closing off of that with it. Okay, so that's what it looks like right now with it. All right, now all right, I'm going past 11 minutes here. So let me stop. This is the end of the second part to layout number 3. So this is the end of layout 3, end of part 2.